program at the U of M and had worked with on the MSHIMP program with Dr. Cesar Corzo. And certainly, I know many times we've called when we're ready to throw our hands up and say, what's this all mean, Mariana? And so she's going to talk to us today a little bit about PRRS L1C.5.32, a variant with the epidemiological indicators and rapid spread across the U.S.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Good. So actually, a lot of the work that we are doing today is a consequence of the work that Rabza's group has done. So it was great that she got a chance to present first. A lot of the things that we're going to discuss again is things that emerged from that initial description that they did. You saw something similar to this slide earlier with Igor's presentation, but I just like to start always with just a review on PRRS in general. And we know that PRRS substitution rates are higher even amongst other RNA viruses, as Igor already mentioned. But what I like to point out with this is that because of that, we can actually expect to have constant emergence of PRRS variants over time, right? So I also usually like to start by just giving a refresher of the current nomenclature that we have been using to talk about PRRS2 in particular. This is the work led by Dr. Kim van der Wal. And basically, the finer level classification that we have for PRRS currently is the variant level, in which sequences or viruses belonging to the same variant are going to be, on average, 2.5% different between each other. The higher level above variant is going to be sublineage, and above that we have lineage. The variant nomenclature includes, let me see if I can point that. The variant nomenclature includes here the lineage, which is indicated by a number, sublineage, which is indicated by a letter, and then dot and a unique variant ID. So actually, when we are talking about a variant nomenclature, we are actually including all of this other additional information as well, so we can have a very complete understanding of where these viruses fall within a phylogenetic tree, for example. And as I mentioned, we do expect to have constant emergence of PRRS viruses or variants over time, right? And similar to COVID, not all of the variants that emerge are going to be of interest or concern, right? For COVID, we have classifications like variants being monitored, variants of interest, variants of concern, and variants of high consequence. And the way they are classified is, of course, through machine learning using sequence data, but also through clinical epidemiological information as well. So how prevalent is a given variant? Is it increasing in transmission in both time and space? And how severe it is? For PRRS in particular, we didn't have anything like that, so our group recently started reporting on PRRS variants under monitoring. So this is a brand new project that we are launching. We already have 2 reports out, but basically variants under monitoring, PRRS variants under monitoring are going to be the ones that are flagged through a machine learning algorithm to have predicted high potential for widespread transmission. And this is based on both genetic and epidemiological characteristics, and those are also variants that are currently circulating in the US. However, even if we do apply a machine learning algorithm like this, we still have a long list of about 20 to 30 variants that we are monitoring currently, right? And of course, it's a lot of information. So the way we did this report in particular is that we further classified those variants into 4 categories based on the number of sites that are affected by each variant in the past 6 months. So these categories here are actually meant to kind of mimic the hurricane classification, in which we have, for example, category 1 representing variants that are occurring in low transmission right now, and category 4 are the ones that are occurring in much higher frequency at the moment. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because variant 1C 1C.5.32 that we are talking about today is currently classified as variant VUM category 4, which means that it's a variant that is occurring in a very high frequency. Rebsa already mentioned that, so I'm just going to briefly comment on this, but it's impossible to talk about 1C.5.32 without talking about 1C.5, right? Many of you here in this room today might remember a similar talk we had about this 4 years ago when we were discussing the emergence of 1C.5. And what triggered the reporting at the time was that we were finding many similar viruses circulating in multiple sites at the farm. So in June last year, Rebsa's group reported those clonal expansions within 1C.5, and as we can see here, it's a very similar situation to what we had in late 2020. So all of that led to the refinement of variant classification, and then variant 1C.5 actually got split into 5 new variants, and those are represented over here. The way that PRRS variant nomenclature adapted was to include the unique variant integer number at the end, but keep in the middle the immediate parent of that variant. So that's why we say 1C.5.32, just to denote that they are descendants from the variant 1C.5. But if you want to say just 1C.32, we can still identify which variant it is because the unique identifier is going to be the last digits. But we are talking about this particular clade here, as we can see, again, as Rabda mentioned, what they were calling clonal expansion, right? Just because of the characteristics of this clade. And for those of you that are still not used to variant nomenclature and want to translate this into RFLP, we can see that the majority of the cases are associated with RFLP 144s, which of course we know that it's not exclusive to this variant because the variant 1C.5 is also majoritarily comprised of 144 viruses, right? So nowadays, if we say that we have a 144 virus, we have no idea if we're talking potentially about 1C.5 or 1C.5.32. So we need to be a little bit more specific than that, and that's where the variant classifications might help us communicate. But I also wanted to point out that there are several other RFLP patterns there in that variant classification as well. So again, we really should try to move a little bit forward and kind of avoid the RFLP in this scenario. But I'm here today to talk about what is the current epidemiological situation of 1C.5.32 from a site level perspective, right? I'm bringing a lot of things from the VUM report, variant under monitoring report, just because we are doing those epidemiological descriptions every month already. But as you can see here, with 1C.5.32 is the VUM category 4, and as of September, early September, we had a total of over 1,500 sequences from this variant identified. We can see the epicurve here. This is the number of new sites affected by this variant. Oh, sorry, this is the number of sequences detected by this variant over time, and we can see 3 peaks in detection here. However, if we look at the table over there, of those 1,500 sequences, we actually have a total of 700 sites. So about half of those sequences actually represent new cases, right? And this is important because as herds that are affected by PRRS remain positive and stable for longer periods, it's more likely that those herds are actually going to generate more than one sequence, right? So of those 700 sites affected, half of them occurred in the previous 6 months. So again, indicating that we have a very high transmission of this variant. We have, if we look at the site level here, we're going to see a much different epicurve. So we can see that the magnitude of those curves changed drastically, but we still see those 3 peaks in transmission over there as well. Regarding this variant in particularly, at the moment we have a total of 22 production systems identified as having this variant from 10 states, which is similar to what Rebsa presented earlier. So because we have site-level information, we were also looking for space-time clustering of newly affected sites, right? So we looked throughout the whole period in which this variant, since this variant emerged, and we found 4 space-time clusters. The first one was identified in western Iowa in the end of 2023 with 5 production systems involved. Following that, we found another space-time cluster earlier in 2024, more towards the northeast of Iowa, with 4 production systems involved. And then the next space-time cluster we found was already in Minnesota. And this was southern Minnesota, 2 production systems involved, so a much smaller space-time cluster. And then more recently, in May, we had a bigger cluster involving 4 production systems in Minnesota still. It's important to note that at the moment, we don't have any ongoing space-time cluster, but we keep monitoring, and that doesn't necessarily mean that this is not completely widespread, right? It's just that we don't have any clustering in both time and space at the same time. As I mentioned, we found this variant in 10 states. And again, this map is very similar to what Rabza presented, but this indicates the number of sites in which we found to be affected by this variant. Again, we see a wide distribution in the US, but still we can see that the majority of the cases are going to be concentrated in Minnesota and Iowa. And again, I like to point out the similarities with the emergence of 1C.5 in 2020. This is exactly what we were seeing in the early days of the 1C.5 emergency as well. So it's following a very similar patterns in terms of spatial distribution as well. So I want to take this opportunity to plug in a project that we are doing currently. So if you happen to have a herd affected by 1C.5, Dr. Kim van der Wal is conducting a new study to assess virulence of this variant. So please contact her to talk more about eligibility and participant benefits. And then just to finalize my presentation here, I just want to point out that no surveillance system is perfect, right? So we discussed a little bit here today that sequence-based surveillance does not necessarily accurately represent the burden and magnitude of disease, right? Because we have sites doing multiple sequences over time, but it is quite useful to determine the range that we are seeing those variants and also initial signals as Rabza presented. At the same time, site-level surveillance is also not 100% comprehensive, right? Because unfortunately, we don't monitor 100% of the swine sites here in the US. But it's still very useful for us to understand transmission, particularly if we can assess those space-time clustering and how this virus is moving from farm to farm. So with that, we understand that it's very challenging to keep up with all of this first variant emergency. It seems like every year we're talking about a different variant here. And also for those of you dealing with PRRS every day in the field, some variants affecting your herds might not necessarily be in the media spotlight, right? So it's hard to understand really what's going on. So again, that's just the main objective of this PRRS variant under monitoring report is to just improve situational awareness. As we mentioned, we are describing every month how many variants we have in each category. So as of September, from the past 6 months, 22% of all of the sequences generated are sequences from variants classified as category 4, meaning that they are occurring in a high number of sites at the moment. And then again, for all of those, we do some additional epidemiological description as well. More than that, we also present epidemiological curves over there, so you can follow up in real time. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because we're discussing 1C.5.32 now, but next month you might want to understand, okay, what's the current situation, and you have a very good source here to go and see what's going on at the moment with each of those variants. And then for each of those variants, we also generate a situation report, which is pretty much just a quick summary of what is published in the literature and in the news regarding what we know in terms of populational growth or distribution of this variant, and also production impact of severity. So in this sense, again, another plugin to, if you need another incentive to use variant nomenclature, this is a very good incentive because we can only find information if we are all using the same terminology, right? If each one of us uses a different terminology, it's very hard to compile data. So with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'll take any questions if you have any.
As you look at that data, it looks like it's predominantly moving through the wean to finish versus the sow farm. Is that something you're going to continue to track, or?
Yes, yes, and we do see that for most of the variants that we are monitoring as well. Majority of them are going to occur in growing pigs at the moment, because again, once we tease out the number of sequences when in comparison to number of sites, it's easier to understand the difference in terms of occurrence between breeding and growing sites, right?
And do you have a do you have a sense of time between the wean to finish and sow farms yet, or?
No, we don't. We looked at it in the past for PRRS in general, and we didn't find any time association there, but not for each variant in particular yet. But that's a good point, good suggestion.
Thanks again.
Thank you.